actually not in front of me.
You're live,
but-
Commissioner.
All right, good morning. Welcome to the Thurston County Board of County Commissioners work session for June 24th, 2021. My name is Ty Menser, Chair of the Board. To my left is Vice Chair Commissioner Gary Edwards. To my right is Commissioner Carolina Mejia. Today we have Josh Cummings, our Director of Community Planning and Economic Development, and kind of third in line. He's like the Speaker of the House. He's like
State.
our county manager is out of town, and Assistant County Manager Robin Campbell is with us through Zoom, but we weren't sure if she would make it. So Josh will be leading things in a sense today. We have prosecuting attorneys, Elizabeth Petrich and Travis Burns, in case issues come up in this discussion. The discussion this morning is just a follow-up to the public hearings we had. We had two public hearings on Tuesday. One regarding the Budget Amendment 1, and the second related to the amendment to the capital improvement plan. And that's it for this morning. We have an hour and I think more if we need it. But at this point, I'm going to let kind of Josh maybe just kind of frame where we are, what we need to accomplish here, and then it's really just for the board to have a follow-up discussion, ask questions of attorneys if needed. If we need to go to executive session, we're prepared to do that. But go ahead, Josh.
Great. Thank you, Chair. Yes, as discussed, the topic for discussion this morning is Budget Amendment 1 and Capital Improvement Program Amendment Public Hearings Follow-Up Discussion. This is, as a reminder for the viewing public, this is a practice of good government. The commissioners don't have an opportunity to talk on important matters to county government except for in these transparent forums. And so this is the opportunity for the commissioners to engage with each other and with staff on issues of importance to the government and the business of the government. And so this is that time to engage on those topics, and the topics specifically related to the budget amendment that's coming up on June 29th. And so as it currently stands on that budget amendment will be the Budget Amendment 1 as well as the Capital Improvement Program Amendment. And the discussion for the commissioners this morning is whether or not you'd like to amend that agenda, which will be voted upon next Tuesday, June 29th. So in terms of facilitation, I'm here to provide assistance. You have had executive sessions on this topic, so I'd remind the board that the things that were discussed in the executive session should remain that way. You do have legal counsel here for guidance or direction, and you have staff that's been engaged on this issue in terms of the public process and the financials on both of these different topics. So unless there's anything more, I'd say please proceed. Would you like to hear from staff, or would you like to begin the discussion?
So let's, I just want to restate something you said in case it doesn't get lost. The two items are tentatively on Tuesday's agenda. This board would need to basically give direction to remove one of them if that were the pleasure of the board.
Or the action would, yes, the action would be, they are on the agenda.
Mm-hmm.
The action would be to leave the agenda as it stands, amend the agenda, or remove an item.
Okay.
There is a thing I'd like to clarify, please. We have noticed, and I'm sure Elizabeth will clarify, but we have noticed that the board will take action on the budget amendment on June 29th. If you choose to not take action on the budget amendment, it will be at least 3 weeks before you have another opportunity, because we'll have to notice that again. And as I've expressed before, there are many items on the budget amendment. So the other option is to remove or add something to the amendment. And we would need to know that today so that we can prepare the proper documents. So we could still move forward with the remainder of the amendment.
Thank you, Rob.
Okay, good clarification. So let's start with Budget Amendment 1. And these conversations might bleed into each other, but just in an effort to stay organized, let's talk about Budget Amendment 1. There seemed to be less, I think, public input on that one, although there's a lot of pieces in there. Did the board have any concern about remaining on that on the agenda? Questions for staff or council, or?
Well, my opinion hasn't changed any, so I guess I'll let,
On budget amendment one?
yeah, how about you guys, go ahead? I don't think I've got much to say on the whole thing, cause it seems to be pretty well, I've made it pretty clear where I'm at.
Well, I do think that that's an important delineation. So we do have two separate issues, the budget amendment one and the capital improvement program. So maybe we start with the public comment that was received on the budget amendment one process. Would that be helpful to kind of reset the stage?
Sure.
Sure, yeah, anything helps.
Commissioner, you said that your position's been clear, and I'm not clear on your position on budget amendment one.
Well, I've got concerns about, the whole atrium. I mean, that's my main concern. But I have additional concerns on the Mottman to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I wanna help Mary Hall out, but I'm not sure we're proceeding correctly, that's all.
But that's the capital improvement plan piece.
Yeah,
But I know there's earmark in there in the
There's
budget amendment. but
connections.
There's not really an expenditure. Robin, maybe we can start there. Can you clarify to what extent concerns about the properties would affect a commissioner's consideration of the budget amendment? To what extent are they intermingled?
Sure. So we do have two items in the budget amendment. One for the lease and tenant improvements of the atrium or 3000 Pacific building. That is $7 million from REIT. And we have not signed a letter of intent with the owner yet. So should the board take that out, or even if you were to leave it in, we would not spend the money until you gave a green light to do so. The other item is the purchase of Mottman. 5.6 million is the purchase price. That's what's in the budget. It is also flagged from REIT, although it's a little more complicated. The REIT, I'm going to step back. The plan has been, as we have discussed in past meetings, that we will issue a bond to do construction work on the courthouse when we get close to doing that work, major maintenance projects. And we're working on a plan to present the board for that. And the purchase of Mottman would be paid for from the bonds. However, as you know, we are already in a contract to purchase Mottman, and that is planned to close on June 30. So we're, unless the board directs me to pull out of that real estate agreement, we will be spending the 5.6 million. We'll spend it initially out of REIT. One of the items on your agenda next Tuesday is an interfund loan. We talked about that this last Tuesday. It's a bridge loan until the bonds are issued and we have cash, and it's just to maintain cash flow. So as I said, Mottman is complicated. I do believe that, and you can run this past the attorneys, but I believe that even if you do not amend the CIP, that we are still legal to purchase Mottman, because you have an item on the current CIP that is for land acquisition, which is exactly what we'd be doing. But we would not have anything on the CIP to do the tenant improvements until you add that next year. So those are the two items, and I'm sure the Mottman is clear as mud, but
So those are two items out of probably hundred-ish involved
yes,
in budget amendment.
there are hundreds of line items in the budget amendment.
Okay. Commissioner Mejia, anything you need clarified here?
The budget improvements, I do not at this point. I mean, there was a lot of discussion when we went through the budget amendment process, and thank you, Robin, for the little cheat sheet you provided on, at the public hearing, that was really helpful to kind of rehash what we went through again. So at this time, I don't have anything other to add or questions.
And you asked Commissioner Burr where I'm at. The budget amendment I'm comfortable with. I just want to clarify that we're still working through the financial details of whether or not the $7 million expenditure on the atrium is a decision, or is something that the board would do. So, but to have it there, but I certainly think it's something we may do, and it's, there's a long and complicated process with respect to all of this, and things have to be done along the way. So keeping that door available to us, I think I'm comfortable with where this is falling in this kind of, year-long process that we go through each year. Mottman, as Robin just said, is a decision we've made and a contract we've entered into, and is a purchase that's about to happen. The atrium is in a different situation. I still have to be convinced that the necessary tenant improvements to make our offices and departments work well fit within the financial means that we have. And we're hopeful we can get there, but we have not gotten, from my perspective, we have not gotten to that finish line. So that may or may not occur, but this is in a sense, a technical decision to budget for it. There's a lot of things we budget for and we don't, in case we need to do it. And this falls into one of those things. This is not the decision to do it. This is the decision to keep the option to do it in front of us and available to us. And that's where I'm at, so that's why I'm comfortable with this amendment myself. So,
Okay.
you've heard from us. Go ahead,
I
Commissioner.
guess I've mentioned some of this before, but I believe that the whole atrium project is a premature activity that we should not be going down the road at this point in time. I've mentioned that I talked to folks from Pierce County. I know this is a very simplistic analysis of what they've said, but I think it applies to us. 1/3 of their staff doesn't want to come back. They want to work from home. Those that have jobs that they can work from home. 1/3 want to come back. 1/3 don't know what they want to do yet. They're still in a quandary over it, I guess. And Pierce County is cutting back on all their leases. They're reviewing everything they've got. I know they're a bigger entity than we are, but I think the principle applies. I think the presentation that we heard at the Thurston Regional Planning Council, I believe that hit it right on the head. There's a lot of reasons that I do not think we should go forward that have been laid out publicly. And it has to do with the response to the virus and what the new work process is going to look like down the road in the future. And we have bought many of those people that are going to be working from home. We've bought them computers and printers and hooked them up so they can do their job. And that's why I'm opposed to the whole process, because there is a connection.
I bet that the Pierce County employees that want to work from home are not the Superior Court judges of that county. And let me finish. In this county, in 2014, we paid for a consultant to do a space study looking at district court. At that time, which was 7 years ago, and tens and tens and tens of thousands of people less than we have today, district court was determined to have 50% of the space that it needed to do its work. That's just one building out of the 3 in this complex. The population has only expanded, is only projected to expand. In fact, teleworking is expected to accelerate population growth in Thurston County, because people from Seattle can now live a perfect Thurston County life, because we know we're the Superior County.
There you go.
And they can live here and telecommute to their job up in King. So that was something presented at the Martin Way Corridor study that TRPC put on last night, where they talked a whole section on that. So we're just growing and growing and growing, and just look at courts. Courts cannot be teleworked. Courts cannot be done from home. We have a 9th judge just added. We have nowhere to put that judge. I just met with the civil bar. They're asking me to support a 10th judge because we were already 2.75 judges behind the rest of it. So this complex, being able to renovate this and expand it for just courtrooms alone justifies leasing some outside space. We have a very detailed set of documents from our real estate advisors that we pay as consultants that talk about. They looked around and found no other. There was no other space to meet the needs of what we would have to do to lease space for administration within the confines of the law and the transit needs and things that we would want to have. They outlined that the proposed rent and financial pieces are under market, if anything, at this point. So anyway, I get where you're going, Commissioner, but we're just so many years behind meeting the basic space needs of this county that, and this is a modest step. I want to keep emphasizing, this is not raising people's taxes to build a $250 million courthouse complex. That's where all of the arguments that you made would be, I think, on point. And that's why the board pulled back that ballot initiative and did not put it back on target. This is the alternative solution. This is to say, let's take a refurbished hardware building and move some administration there so we can make room for our court proceedings right here in this complex that we own and that it belongs to us. So this is the scaled back. Let's solve a need at a fraction of the cost. Let's not raise taxes one bit. Let's leverage federal dollars if we can. This is a win for the people that opposed the courthouse from the beginning. This is a demonstration that they won the argument in a sense with a big boost from the pandemic. And we're not going to be doing what we originally planned. We're going to be doing something much more scaled back at a fraction of the cost to meet what I think are just the absolute minimal needs for county government as we look into the next 15 plus years. But you had something to say about that a bit.
Those are all good points, and they might have been applicable at a different time. I really think that we solved some of our immediate problems by the rental over on Chandler Court. I think we leased some court space and remodeled it over there to address some of these needs. Maybe we need to get more space. There's a lot of empty office space over there right now. And I think there's other solutions. Let me just ask Robin something, if she can remember back. Robin, we had a Ming report and a Kidder Matthews report for the evaluation of this property. This is before my seatmates were here. And I believe one of them said the property was worth about $100 million that the complex we're on now. And one of them said it was worth about $7 million. Do you recall either one of those facts that I'm talking about?
I recall the valuation of the courthouse that was part of the research done as the board considered building a new courthouse, and that the value was very low. I also recall that the reason that it was very low is the valuation is for today's allowed uses. And the city of Olympia has zoned the property that the campus is currently on as the only use for it is a courthouse. So that is why the resale value was low. And the discussion was that should the city rezone the property, that it would of course be a much greater value and would sell for a whole lot more than the amount that was in that appraisal. But appraisals are done under current conditions, and that is why the price tag was low.
Well, okay. And that, I think that was around $7 million. What
I
about-
believe that's correct.
Okay, and I don't have those figures in front of me, I don't have exact figures, but, and the Ming report, okay, but it was $100 million or plus,
The Ming report was the valuation of the assets, which has nothing to do with resale value. It had the value as is carried in our financial reports.
I know,
Is that like replacement
So they're
value or
very
something? Is that a different?
Very different.
well, it is very different.
What's your point on that? I'm not sure.
The point is, I don't understand that, and I don't understand why there's a big push to get off the hill. I think this is a super complex that we need to remodel and do something with.
And that's what this whole plan is for.
I know,
It's to stay here and make it
But
a long.
I think it's a big mistake, and I'm gonna compliment the developer down at the 3000 building, because he has done a super job. I just don't think we don't need it. He's done a great job, but it's a Taj Mahal that we don't need. And that's where I'm at. I mean,
Okay, so it sounds like we've got, go ahead.
So because I wanna talk to some points that were brought up here. I guess I'll talk to the first point of moving off the hill. I disagree with that statement. I think the whole point is for us to be able to stay in this hill longer and be able to update these buildings, which are so important, and be able to make them of use, for the public. And there's no push to get us off the hill. We're still gonna stay here. Again, second point, this has been talked about, the need for space, since 1997. And since 1997, we have not accomplished anything. And things have just gotten more expensive, and they'll keep getting more expensive. And it doesn't matter what the situation brings. It doesn't matter if there's a recession. Still, the need for space is there. And as long as we keep saying, there's something gonna come down the road, the more we're gonna be in the hole, and we're already in the hole pretty deep. We need to update these buildings, and I feel like this is a path forward. In relation to the TRPC presentation, I saw that too. And with that, she laid out the pros of teleworking, but she laid it out more for private enterprises, which I found very interesting. But she also laid out the cons of teleworking. And at the end of the day, I feel as commissioners, we only have a certain control over the workers and what each office and department does. I don't believe I can go into Superior Court and tell them, half your staff is going to telework. It doesn't work like that. They're going to run their office and court system as they see fit. And we can't force everyone to telework. It just doesn't, it's not the viable option. Not everyone can have that option. I feel this will also give us the flexibility to fix these buildings right here, which is one of the main things I continue to hear about, is fix the buildings where you're at. And this will give us that flexibility to finally fix where we're at and take care of the buildings here. And still allows us to maintain it. We also talked about the leasing the space on Chandler Court. We will be able to finally get out of that space. Chandler Court, Drug Court, and the sheriff's space that we're currently leasing, that is leased space, we're finally going to be able to get out of those spaces and use these buildings here. So we are going to be getting out of some leased space.
Records as well.
And records, thank you. I just, I keep hearing there are other options out there, but the options really haven't been laid out in front of us of what other options are there. We had an assessment early on where basically we were presented with all the properties that are available to rent and to buy, and there was nothing that would really fit the needs of where the county is at now and where it might go into the future. Let's say if we go into a 5 board commissioner, where are we gonna put the other 2 commissioners? I guess we're gonna make more closet space and clear out a broom space and put them in there, but it's things that we have to look at in the future. And I believe that piecemealing this whole situation it's not really effective and it's not efficient. So I guess I'll get off my soapbox now.
Can I respond to that, sir?
You can't. Although we're gonna, this discussion will go directly into the piece on the.
Okay, that's fine.
So let's just kind of focus on the budget amendment. It
Well,
sounds like.
this, I have to respond.
Okay, go ahead.
I just have to respond. Commissioner Mejia brings out some good points, but the reality is I've been here a long time. And in about 2014, I started hearing from the business community in downtown Olympia, which I'm fairly well connected, that boy, it would sure be something if we could revitalize this downtown area with a real nice courthouse down here, okay? That kind of got me in the mix, to be honest with you, because I didn't think it was a good idea then because of what goes on downtown, basically. I think the downtown area of Olympia is a shambles. They've ruined, we have this beautiful, I grew up in this town, and this has been the nicest town, and I've been all around the world. And I think it's been the best. Now it's categorizing as the worst. And it's through the management of the way they run the city. So to me, there has been a big push to get off the hill ever since mid-teens. And it's all about revitalizing the downtown area. There's a lot of people that own property down there that's income property, investment property, and they want it to turn out good. They're gonna have a heck of a time making a recovery down there until everything changes. The management of the downtown, the whole homeless thing, we've got a lot of problems that we have to deal with. And yeah, there's not been anything official about getting off the hill, but it sure looks like we need to get off the hill is the push. And that was before I ever came on here.
But we're not
as
doing that.
commissioner. Well,
Civic Avenue is nowhere near
Well,
downtown.
that's okay. We got the homeless stuff down there, those parking lots. Some of our own people are saying this is a bum deal for 7 years. They don't want to say anything to the county manager because all of them work for the county manager in one fashion or another. And that's just the way life is. A lot of times people don't like to complain. So as long as we're gonna keep the move towards downtown, I think there's other options. I think we can lease space up here on the hill, I'm not against going for a bond issue as long as we do it right and let the citizens determine if they want to put a complex right here that would be a first-class complex for the courts, mainly. The whole criminal justice component, but mainly the courts and the safety of the courts. This is not a fix that's gonna get fixed overnight. We need to spend some time on it. I don't see a big reason to push ahead. And then you end up in a situation, maybe the CIP gets appealed to the Growth Management Board. If that happens, it's gonna be a big delay. And so everything we've kind of laid out is for naught anyway. So why not, let's come up with a bigger plan. And as long as everything is connected, I gotta vote against it because I don't want any association with what I feel is misuse. And the county's got a history of misuse. Whether that history was building a jail and letting it sit empty, whether that use was buying a fish plant, letting it sit empty, whether it was the way we handled the Maytown thing. All those things went through the Planning Commission and through the whole process of adjusting the CIP, and somebody thought they were doing the right thing. Obviously, they were not. The gravel pit cost us $16 million on whatever the mistake was. The Supreme Court ruled 9-0 against Thurston County in the end. $16 million. That's how wrong we were. For that very liberal Supreme Court to rule against us to that extent. I think says something.
Okay, Commissioner, if I may.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
I'm kind of off my soapbox for a minute, but
All right.
we're gonna have more discussions, I think.
Well, and I think as we started this session, this is an important opportunity for the board to have conversations related to lots of different topics. But I want to make sure that we're zeroed in on the topic for discussion, which is the budget amendment. And before we move forward on that, I'd like to engage with Robin Campbell. I see she has a question. Maybe I'll let you go first, Robin, but I have a question of clarification for
I
you.
just want to comment, with all due respect, I want to clarify that at no time has Thurston County had a misuse
Thank you.
of public funds.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So that was my first point. Thank you for clearing that up. And then my second question, Robin, is just to confirm on the budget amendment, this is the overarching package for all of the county elected offices and departments and the business of government that they have submitted and the board has approved. And amongst those hundreds or so budget amendments is this one CIP question that we're having. And even approving that does not give a green light to the CIP project. It provides flexibility if the board so chooses on the next decision.
I would agree with that. For the atrium, however, once they approve the funding for Mottman,
Right.
it will be spent.
Correct. The board has already ruled on the Mottman and decided
Right.
to go forward.
So if if I can interpret your question, and pose it back to the board, I would ask the board, are there any concerns on any other item in the budget amendment?
That's where I was gonna be asking Commissioner Mejia. I think Commissioner Edwards and I are pretty clear. I support the budget amendment as presented. Commissioner Edwards would like to remove it from the agenda because of the connection.
Could I comment on that, sir?
Okay.
I think what Robin is talking about, as far as the everyday business of doing business in Thurston County, the way we're doing it today, without fixing everything that we're talking about right now, I realize we should go forward with this budget amendment to adjust where there's
All the
proper,
technical adjustments.
yeah, all those technical adjustments. It's just with everything tied together,
Yeah,
I'm stuck.
Yeah, I understand. I think that's clear. Commissioner Mejia,
I'm ready to move forward.
do you have any other items besides the two that we've been batting around? Do you have any other things in the budget amendment that cause you concern?
No, I think we've discussed them already.
Okay. So yeah, I think we've got clear direction to remain forward with the budget amendment.
Great. So just to restate that, budget amendment 1 remains on the agenda as it currently stands for Tuesday's decision.
Yep, 2-1 on that. And then,
Just make sure that we get the vote recorded, that's all
and it'll
I'm
have,
concerned about.
and honestly,
It's
this
just
is,
what-
we're gonna, it's by virtue of being on the Tuesday agenda, we'll be touching on it Tuesday morning at
Sure.
agenda setting, and then we'll have it formally addressed, so there'll be 2 more opportunities to say whatever you need to say, Commissioner
Yeah.
and Commissioner.
But the decision has been made to not amend that.
No changes
No
to the budget.
changes, no changes are requested by the majority of the board.
2-1.
All right, then the CIP amendment, obviously, it's very connected to what we just talked about, but there were some legal wrinkles processed, and we had an extended executive session with both the council that are here today. Most of the issues were addressed during that executive session. There might be one or two that have a different color to them or a different wrinkle, and I know commissioners might have heard something that raised questions for them. We have the ability to go into executive session if we need to. I don't know that I heard anything, given how extensive our discussion was last week, I don't know that I personally am requesting executive session for questions to be answered, but my seatmates would certainly have that prerogative.
No, I'm not.
Commissioner Mejia, is there a question raised by public comment that you would like to talk with Travis or Elizabeth in the context of an executive session?
No, not at this time.
Okay. Okay, well, I don't know if there's much more to be said. I know Commissioner Edwards opposes this. I kind of made my spiel on it in saying that, I have not yet decided about whether we should be moving forward on atrium. I absolutely think it would be great for county government. It's just a matter of the money. We've got to be able to afford it, and I want to achieve all of our other goals of our rainy day fund and our new fund balance targets, and I'm trying to recalibrate the the financial health of the county, and this has to fit within that larger set of priorities for me. But we need to have it on the CIP. I know we did, Robin, one question I wanted to ask you is, you know, a lot of the things that were kind of thrown out as being not a good way to go about things process-wise, how does this compare to Chandler Court, for example, where we had a situation in the middle of the year, we made tenant improvements, we made an amendment, we added the project, we allocated money to tenant improvements on leased space that we did not own. I didn't hear any of the same issues. And now, you know, now it's just been a flurry of like process objections. And I'm just wondering, are those two things analogous and, or?
I think they're they're the same, but they're different. So they are similar in what you outlined. It is tenant improvements that the county paid for on leased property, which is a legal thing that the county can do. They are different in that the Chandler Court lease is in direct response to the pandemic. The courts could not hold, they didn't have adequate space to conduct their business in a manner that was safe for everyone involved without that extra space. So it was an emergency tied to the pandemic. We paid for it with federal dollars. That's the other difference is in this, with the atrium, we're proposing using REIT funds, and state law on REIT requires the project to be on the CIP. If you're using federal dollars, there is no requirement to have the project on the CIP. So you did not see an amendment to the CIP, and we were able to do it under emergency basis with federal money.
Thank you. That's a good distinction for me to understand.
And I guess I'd just follow up on that. And I'm not doubting anything that Robin has said, but there was never any challenge from anybody as far as like bringing something in front of the Growth Management Board, for an example, of sequence of events.
Well, that's what I was wondering. I mean, we didn't have
Nobody said anything.
I was more worried about the process, you know, like going to the planning commission and the minor amendment versus, you know, I mean, all of that. But it sounds like we didn't necessarily need to do that because of the funding source.
Correct.
I think, if I may, just as kind of backing up a little bit in terms of the CIP topic, I'd like to remind the board that the public hearing did take place. Staff member did provide the lineage, the timeline of the public input and the process that was provided. The Board of County Commissioners did have an executive session on that process, potentially, as it was stated publicly, and no action was taken by the board. Legal representation is here to provide any answers to questions the board may have, but just to confirm that this is worked through multiple steps, the CIP discussion, and if it's a decision on policy or otherwise to amend, this is that time to discuss whether or not to amend the CIP or to leave it as is for the discussion on Tuesday. But I'd just like to remind everyone that we've had multiple conversations on process, and now it's a decision on whether or not to adjust or change.
Okay, Commissioner McGee?
No.
Do you support the inclusion of this amendment? I think we're clear. I mean, I think you oppose the inclusion and I support it, so I guess you're the swing vote.
I support it. I'm kind of like you were. I'm waiting to see, you know, what the estimates are going to be and what the end financials numbers are going to look like. But it would be good to have it in the plan just in case everything does work out and it looks, you know, like a viable option. So.
Yeah, I mean, we have those project lists. A lot of times, like, is this analogous in a sense to like I'm looking at Jennifer maybe, but like I know like say for transportation, you know, we have a long list of things we'd like to do. And some of them, I mean, the funding might cover the first couple three, but we might have 20 more that like, it's like, we're gonna be looking for funding in the future. We may never be able to do it because we may never have the money to do it, or we may get a big crowd but it's just, is this decision to place these two projects on a list like that, is it analogous to that, where it's basically saying, here's a project that we may like to do. We're not saying we're doing it for sure. We're not saying the funding is all dialed in, but we're identifying it as a capital project that we would like to do. You see you nodding, is that?
That's correct. The CIP is there to just allow you to have that pathway to do that facility should those funding dollars that are identified in the CIP come through in some cases. And also in the case of REIT funds, it preserves your ability to use those funds on that particular facility. So it's a plan, it's not an obligation to complete a project.
Okay, and I want to make those, thank you, I just want those sideboards to be really clear so that my decision, my support today can be put in that context.
It doesn't, and this has to be accomplished in 6 years. It's a 6-year plan rather than an extended plan, which shortens the ability to do any other thing. So if we don't have adequate resources in REIT, then, you know, we're stuck. If something comes up. I mean, whether that's the $2 million rainy fund in jeopardy or whatever, there are other issues that tie in with this whole thing, and that's kind of why I'm
You mean
stuck.
other things you might use REIT for?
Yes, yeah.
Anytime it's opportunity cost.
So just to, oops, sorry, go ahead, Robin.
I would say that there is an opportunity cost is exactly the right phrase here. But that's one of the reasons why we amend the plan every year. Every year you see programs come off the plan and other things get added to the plan. But we reassess and the board approves every year the updated plan.
Thank you, Robin. Anything else from the staff here and or legal counsel? No? So I've heard Commissioner Mejia, Commissioner Mincer move to proceed without change on the CIP. And I've heard Commissioner Edwards, no, would like to change.
Yeah.
Ready to move forward?
I think that's it.
Okay. Reported 2-1. The next Tuesday, we'll have these two items on the agenda for the commissioners to take action as they see fit.
All right, then thank you, staff. We'll be back at 10 a.m. for commissioners check-in, but you guys won't, so have a good day.
Thank you.